Hi everyone, there's a lot of shiny new cards in the Liberated Mine, so let's get down to experimenting with them. First off, we have Andromeda. Criminal received quite a few cards this pack, and I'm going to jam them all into a single deck. We have Rebirth, which is pretty good when you're rebirthing out of Andromeda, typically into Leela, but Gabe is possible as well. Ian Sterling, not the worst choice. And then we have the Fisk Investment Seminar into Information Sifting combo. Honestly, that's probably the only way you're going to get Information Sifting to work. By flooding your opponent's hand, you will be able to access more cards with IS. Finally, Turning Wheel. Well, the one influence multi-access card that Criminal has been waiting for. Let's get down to the game. This is a competitive game against New Angela Sol. How will these new cards and my unfamiliar playstyle fare against a competitive deck? That's what I'm going to find out this game. Subpar opening hand, arguably shouldn't have kept it. I think I shouldn't have kept it. That probably is my biggest mistake of the game. I kept it because the two daily cards sitting next to each other are just too tempting. But if I'm not going to get a turn 1 siphon off, this is probably a very awful hand. Stuck with a bunch of breakers, and emergency shutdown I wouldn't use, information sifting not going to happen, bank job probably not going to happen, a lot of dead cards. Pretty bad start, and he targets Desperado off the bat. I think that's not the worst choice. My opponent made a pretty good call here. Usually you target Siphon against Criminal, but in the early game, they are not going to land a Siphon if you ice up HQ. So why not go for Desperado instead? Make the setup time all that much worse. So basically my first turn was locked into double credit, double cast, which means that I have to drop 2 cards, including the information sifting. I don't see myself getting that off. And since he didn't name Siphon, I'm going to keep the Siphon in my hand. He hyperdraws with Jackson. I'm going to Dirty Laundry Archives so that I can get more money. This is where having Desperado would allow me to start snowballing. So not having access to Desperado is pretty bad, but well, it's not in my hand anyway. So it doesn't matter whether he targets it or not. So I'm going to install my Turning Wheel here. This is going to allow me to start face checking centrals. This is one thing Andromeda can do. When you don't have any breakers, you can start face checking centrals. Ideally you have a Desperado, but even if you don't, you can still chalk up counters on Turning Wheel. And this is what makes it such a good multi-access card, right? If you have multiples in your deck, like I do here, I draw the second copy that is useless because it's unique, but that's fine. I'm going to poke around. Newshound is the worst thing that can hit me right now. Anything else, I'll just jack out and gain a power counter on Turning Wheel. Not the worst. So now he thinks of whether he needs to res it. He res his wrap round. That's fine. I gain a power counter. Next is probably R&D. Why not, right? So I go for R&D here. He only has 6 credits. No assassin to worry about this time. And he lets me through for a breaking news. Steal that. Targeted marketing comes back into play. And this time, now that I've shown my hand, now that I show that I don't have Desperado, he's going to name Account Siphon. Unfortunately, this is the moment where I would play the Desperado if I had one. But since I don't, the game goes on, I'll probably gain a credit. I could run to R&D, but I certainly don't want to hit a Gutenberg or anything funny last click. That will cause my entire resource rig to get trashed. Don't run last click, kids. Now, he gets lots of credits, and I really fear for my life here. I thought the mid-season was coming. The mid-seasons is probably not a good play here on the last click because I am getting a lot of cast money. So he doesn't mid-seasons, game goes on. Special order. Okay, this is quite important. I don't really want to play breakers out at this time because that would leave me vulnerable to assassin. This deck doesn't run fairies. I'm running 2 mongies. That's all. So I'm going to play the passport here. Because it's cheap to play, and more importantly, I actually need to get rid of cards from my hand. I could play a Sneak Door Beta at this point, but I choose not to because he just Jackson away stuff, so I assume there are no agendas in hand. He could be holding that Rook Astro. That would kind of suck, and that's probably a good reason to Sneak Door. Even if I don't hit the Astro in his hand, at least I'm getting power counters on Wheel. So the main reason I didn't go for the Sneak Door play is because I don't have Desperado. Simple as that. I'm setting my tempo very far behind if I don't get credits while doing the Sneak Door runs. I special order for a Corroder so that even if he scores an Astro here, which he does, I'll get full access to his HQ and R&D for the next turn. So you bet I'll be running 4 times next turn to get 4 power counters on the Wheel. Nope, I'm only getting 3. So I'm going to lock down R&D, make sure it doesn't top deck an Astro. It's a breaking news. Targeted marketing triggers again. He refreshes it. Still on Account Siphon, which is very smart because otherwise I might go for a Siphon here. So, as always, against Criminal, you almost always name Siphon because the last thing you want to do is to have the credit swing into the runner's favor. I'm going to hit HQ here, make sure it doesn't have Astro in hand, and then lock R&D one more time since I stole the breaking news. I'm going to see one more card here. It's a Tama. That's fine. So notice every turn I'm trying to draw at least one card. This is still an inherent problem in Criminal. Your card draw still stinks, and you don't have the influence to import diesels and stuff. So ultimately, your tempo is very slow. I couldn't take full advantage of the porous centrals that turn because I needed to draw. So finally, I find my sucker, and I'm going to run on the most easily available server, that's HQ. Get a couple of tokens on both turning wheel, the sucker, and keep his hand honest. But judging by the fact that I iced up R&D instead of HQ, you can probably guess there's nothing in HQ. So that's unfortunate. And I am slowly but surely depleting my credit pool. The double cast helped a lot, but it's all gone now. And I would have a lot more money if I found my Desperado. Desperado is still very important for Criminal. Not seeing it early is really causing me a lot of problems. Now he goes for a global food. Probably not breaking news unless he's trying to flatline me. In any case, I need to contest that. Cannot have him go on 5 points with an Astro counter. That's not acceptable. So at this point, I'm like, okay, if he has a news on the remote, I'm done. I'm hoping he has a couple of code gates, at which point, because, well, it's not wrong for him to play code gates when he sees the passport plate so early. So I'm going to surprise him with the Peacock install, and then I'm going to run with 6 credits. Hopefully between Data Sucker and Peacock, I can get 3 rivals on his remote. If he reses a News Hound, I'm done. Completely done. So he lets me pass the first size, and at this point I probably realize that, oh, that's a News Hound. Sure. I get traced. I have to pay 3 credits through that, but most importantly, I don't get through the server. That's a pain. That's such a huge pain. So I draw again. I'm not drawing my mongoose. This is not going well for me. And it is a food. So suddenly I'm on the back foot. What seemed like a pretty decent start for me ends up being a horror movie. And I draw into a sure gamble with 3 credits, which is the worst. So I'm forced to gamble here. Gamble not just in terms of credits, but also gamble that he doesn't top deck or have the winning agenda in hand. Seems like he doesn't. Doesn't have a Bill, doesn't have an Astro, so the game goes on. Unfortunately, I'm all but stuck right here. He installs something in the remote, probably a Sand, and I can't contest that. So I draw into the Fisk. Fisk is so bad when you can't play it on your second click. I would love to draw 3 cards right here, but I can't. Instead, I slammed into the News Hound, which I was really hoping it wasn't the News Hound. Of course it was. It is so. They played 3 News Hounds. I don't have my Sentry Breaker. I'm dying right here. And Siphon isn't an out at this point because it's targeted. I am accumulating a bunch of turning wheel counters, but I'm not making any headway at all in terms of actually winning the game. He gets a couple credits, and at this point I'm like, okay, I'm completely desperate. I'm going to play the Fisk Investment Seminar and give you all the Bills and Astros you can possibly ever want. Now I'm going to sift your information. Hopefully he drew a bunch of agendas because I'll need to get them all this turn. Otherwise I'm more or less done. By drawing him cards, I'm giving him a lot of advantage. I need to siphon all the agendas from his hand at this point. 8 cards. He's probably going to split it into a power 4 and a power 4. I'll just pick a random power and we'll see how things go from there. The cards that I access will definitely determine the course of my next few clicks. So I access 1 power. I see Enigma, Biotic Labor, a Jackson Howard, which I really don't want to trash, and the second Biotic Labor. So at this point, I know that if he top decks anything of R&D, he wins the game. If he has anything other agendas in the second pile, he wins the game. So the only possible move here, given that I have no access to R&D at all, is to go for HQ again and expand all my turning wheel counters to see Tobu. 15 minutes, that's not going to do much. Well, let's hope we get more agendas from pile number 2 from this run. 3 more accesses, what do we see? Enigma, Biotic Labor, and 1 more card, All Seeing Eye. Well, this combo sucks, doesn't it? I mean, sure, I got unlucky on the Fisk draw. If he had drawn more agendas, I could be in a better place. But instead, I drew him all his money, so he plays double hedge fund. He has double Biotic in his hand. He has Enigma. He can fast advance a food from hand for crying out loud. That's the worst. And I have 0 access into R&D, so I'm basically done. At this point, the only thing I can do is to play a Count Siphon. Not to deny him credits, but to give me enough credits to play the show gambles in my hand. Yeah, so this deck is really about the HQ lock, and I'm doing a pretty good job of it. Even if he ices up HQ, I can still play the Sneak Dog. The problem is, against yellow, HQ lock is absolutely useless because they win off R&D. And in this case, he had a winning food in the remote, which again, HQ lock doesn't help. Not gonna lie, that was a very depressing showing. To be really honest, this deck I mean, that game just pissed me off so much at the end of it because it felt like I was just playing from behind the entire time and all my efforts were futile because all the cards that I drew did absolutely nothing in this matchup. The HQ lock that I envisioned with Fisk and information sifting was so underwhelming, it was ridiculous. I even had to expend an entire turning wheel with 8 counters on it on HQ just so that I can be sure that there's nothing in HQ. And that was nowhere enough to win me the game. And yeah, a lot of tech cards that you need to play for the Blue Sun matchup, for the Acid Spam matchup. You know, Emergency Shutdown, Bank Job, all these are just completely dead against Saul. So it felt like I was completely helpless most of the time and being racked like a punching bag. As my opponent just slotted cards behind the News Hound and proceeded to win with such great ease. And it didn't help that the card draw was so pathetic. Fixed Investment Seminar, such a bad card. The only salvation of the entire game was Turning Wheel. It actually made a good showing, and it would have done so much more work if I actually had access into R&D. If I had an inside job, I would have gotten past News Hound, paid 1 for the wraparound, and saw a bunch of cards of R&D. That would have been a way better solution than flooding my opponent's hand with maybe agendas, maybe not agendas, and trying to fetch them all in one turn. That's not how the game works. So, unfortunately, I don't like this deck. It's not really viable competitively. It definitely needs a couple of tweaks. I'm not saying Criminal is bad. You can make an aggressive Criminal deck, and I think that could work, especially with Turning Wheel now, but it needs to be shaped a different way. Not with the intense HQ pressure that I'm doing right now, because it just does not work competitively. Thanks for watching. Happy Net Running. Goodbye.